Well, good afternoon and welcome to Hump Day Wednesday. I hope everybody had a great extended holiday weekend in the U.S. I'm kind of torn. I've had enough days off. I was like, seriously, I got to have another day off. But Pete, I hope you enjoyed your day off with pay.
Oh, yeah.
Practical
I blew
show
it
tech.
all.
We were still working, right? We're still show prep. People say, oh, make sure that keep the message timeless, right? Evergreen. Make sure that you don't remember the dates and this and that. And you know what, folks, who can forget the time we're going through now and the challenges we face, but the great opportunities that are going to be on the other side of that. I just wanted to remind myself to stay positive today. So there's your positive thought for today. At some point, this too shall end, and we'll be doing a lot of the same things that we were doing. Meanwhile, we're going to keep learning about product. We're going to be thinking about ways to do things differently, faster, more efficiently, all that fun stuff. So today is all around Sony. When I say the word Sony, immediately we all think about, some of the most brilliant video products available in the marketplace today. And that's true. But Sony's also a powerful voice in the audio side of things, has been for many, many, many years. And we were just kind of reminiscing before we began today about the various connections all of us have back to Sony. If we talk about UHF wireless, you can't talk about it without recognizing the role that Sony has played in the marketplace over the years, and brought us a lot of really neat features, as well as I have a lot of stories, many different times of using Sony products and what I came to rely on those, and the features, and I think sometimes myself included, we obviously get in a groove of, okay, I know this, I know that, and it's like, hey, you know what, I have time, I'm gonna keep broadening out and make sure that I feel a equally good footing on all products out there right now, and how to apply those. We were talking, I also was mentioning that, when I thought of Sony, I thought of that video, and the role you play with the chief engineer of a broadcast facility, or a place like production studios, where, yeah, when you're selling video at this high level, the audio also has to be prepared to perform at that same level. And that's one of the things that Andy he gets challenged with that every single day, to make sure that all the audio folks in the industry feel that same love about audio that video sometimes gets. I'm sorry to video folks out there, I'm going to beat up on you for just a second because I'm an audio guy, but we're seeing that convergence more than ever, and we have a strong relationship in audio and video together. We need to keep building on that and see those opportunities. So Pete, good to see you. I haven't seen you for like 3 days.
It's hard to believe. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I know. I went with like almost 48 hours without talking to you. It felt like
hard to
really
believe.
weird.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
I was on. I didn't know how to move my mouth anymore.
Yeah. How's the rocket launch looking? We're going to talk about that after the show today. So everybody stay tuned.
I haven't noticed the rocket launch is eclipsed by other news at the moment.
Yeah, okay. So anyhow, we're going to talk about exciting stuff then. We're going to stay focused on microphones.
Exactly.
And,
there we
go. Pete, why don't you walk us kind of through a little Q&A? I see a lot of similar names here, so I think they know the drill, but, we had the weekend off.
People, it probably would have gone by the wayside over the weekend. So, you know that all these webinars are recorded. They'll be available to view through our website, practicalshow.tech, or on YouTube. When you post a question, we'll pass them on to Andy. And please repeat the idea which prompted it, because questions aren't necessarily immediately addressed, and it would help if you gave us a little context. my context comes from working at Sports News in Sports New York, SNY, which was putting a brand new studio down in 4 World Trade Center. And I was brought in to commission their Atom system. And there I met a ton of Sony wireless systems and was very, very impressed with what they were doing and how they were working. They had them all in one room, and they shared them among 3 different studios. But they were quite impressive, the way, the flexibility, the programmability, the interface with their console, everything was really pretty impressive. So Andy, why don't you go ahead and we'll pop in with questions as the time permits.
Great, Peter. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining today. Again, my name is Andy Munitz, and I'm product manager for Sony's professional audio products here in North America. And historically, I've been with Sony since 1984, a long, long time. I was telling the guys earlier that I got my very first Sony reel-to-reel tape recorder when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And, you know, in some respect, I'm doing the exact same thing I've always done. With that, let's kind of move on a little bit, and I'll kind of bring you through where we are today with some of our professional audio products. We're going to focus, obviously, on our wireless product lines, and we have 2 of them. We have what's called our DWX series, which is true digital wireless. We also have UWP-D wireless, and we'll kind of try to touch on both. And you know, the real goal of today is really just to bring all of you up to date on where we are. But in order to know where we are, it sometimes helps to know where one started out. And in that sense, I thought maybe it might be a good idea. We'll start talking about DWX, the digital wireless, because I think that's likely of most interest to a lot of people. But we'll start out with a little bit of a historical perspective. Many people don't know. You think of Sony as this giant video company, but Sony started out as an audio company many, many years ago, back in 1950-ish. And the name Sony even is derived from the Latin word sonus, for sound. And our very first product is what you see here on the screen, a reel-to-reel tape recorder. But if you think about it, what use is a recorder unless it's got an input device? So we had to also make our own microphones back in 1950. This is a shot of Sony's very first manufacturing floor, banging out these tape recorders. And the idea here was not necessarily to market these tape recorders to individuals, but we sold them as an industrial product to schools, and so that performers and musicians could listen to their performances back and do a self-critique. And we have obviously gone through a lot of audio quality improvements through the years, and we're currently in the mode of promoting high resolution audio. Actually, just realized down to the microphone that I'm talking into, our C100, which we bill as a high-res microphone because it goes all the way out to 50K frequency response, but it's a great standard res microphone as well. But we're always trying to improve the audio quality. Anyway, we started out making wireless microphones in early 1960s, and this is a shot of one of our very first wireless microphones, a solid state transmitter, but the receiver was tube-based. We continued to make microphones, and then we went into, pretty serious broadcast quality wireless. As Kelly mentioned, Sony, since we make a lot of broadcast equipment, the broadcast world, as just about every, market that we deal with these days, is mission critical. You just cannot fail. So we've always tried to make equipment that really stood up to those professional applications. As a matter of fact, I would say in the late 80s, early 90s, we were, doing a lot of wireless for some of the biggest names here. We're just kind of showing the Rolling Stones and Michael Jackson. We did some wireless for Bruce Springsteen, but it was known of being, very strongly, very well built wireless that could take the abuse of being on the road. But obviously we did studio applications as well. Not by way of kind of bragging, but the thing that I have enjoyed so much in my career with Sony is seeing the kind of things that our engineers come up with. They look at challenges in any particular product line, whatever the product line is, and they go, let's think about the common, issues that this kind of a product normally has, and let's try to come up with unique solutions. They constantly work. We have some very, very bright engineers that go unheralded, but I like to herald them. And they came up with some great wireless technologies that everybody kind of takes for granted these days, but actually we believe we were the first ones. So, first was having a synthesized UHF system where it wasn't just crystal based. You could just literally tune frequencies. Storing, kind of intermodulation free kind of channel combinations right there in the units. So you didn't need necessarily manuals and things like that. We had phase lock loop circuitry in the systems. We had a ability to have a high number of multiple channels here, 282, using antenna dividers and all sorts of stuff. We had simultaneous operation of up to 42 channels. And we were first to use microprocessors to control the RF and the AF functions. We were the first to use a little, unknown device like a little LCD display on the front of our wireless. They're everywhere these days, but we thought it would be an interesting thing to be able to have that in wireless transmitters and receivers. We always believed in having accumulated battery working time, so you could really see down to the minute how much you've actually used those batteries. So you're not getting rid of batteries that still have plenty of life in them. And we even introduced our very first digital wireless series for ENG back in 2007. That was about the time when the componentry necessary to be able to build true digital wireless and put it in as small a package as was required for ENG for mounting in cameras. That's when we could actually do it. So our company, Sony, had been doing digital audio for so many years, from the compact disc through digital mixers, through so many different digital technologies. But obviously we wanted to make digital wireless part of that family. So enough for the history. Hopefully you got a sense that our engineers are very motivated to constantly improve what is available, certainly in our product line. We take our DWX digital wireless series, and it can be applied to so many different applications. We're just showing several here, you don't have to name them all, but they're obvious, I think. In going now more deeply into actual DWX series, digital wireless transmission series, we'll touch on these following feature sets. We obviously offer a very superb digital audio quality with true double tuner diversity reception, and always in 2-channel receivers, and each channel has 2 tuners. We have now ultra wideband models that cover all of the newly legal FCC frequencies from UHF 14 up through even slivers in 38. We make scanning as easy as we possibly can, and we'll go into that because a lot of people that use our wireless, certainly in ENG and EFP, if they are, primarily photogs, audio may not be their strongest suit. So making sure they can learn easily how to scan for quiet frequencies wherever and whenever they are is very, very important. So we're always trying to facilitate that. We have Zigbee wireless remote control at a distance. Even up to in a little ENG, talent can be up to about 30 feet away from the cameraman, and cameraman can still via Zigbee reach out and control all the settings on the talent's transmitters. We can tune in, as I said, there's a very wide spectrum of 5,384 channels, which you can count up if you put our units into 25 kilohertz resolution tuning mode. And that's obviously really important if you are in an environment where there is a frequency coordinator on site and he assigns you a frequency and says, you want to be in my sandbox, this is the frequency I'm giving you, and you better be able to go there. We have encryption, and that's obviously important for several things, but the obvious ones I think are field production for episodic TV shows and movies where you don't want somebody around the corner from your set listening into your plot lines, and so that's nice. And that encryption, by the way, is not just one-to-one, but it's one-to-one or one to multiple receivers or many transmitters to many receivers, all in the same kind of grouping, if you will. We have a complete family of wireless products for the DWX lineup that support all of these applications: ENG, News Studio, Location Sound, Live, and Theater Operation. And they're cosmetically, for what it's worth, I think worth a reasonable amount, but they're integrated with our camera lineup, but not only cosmetically, also functionally. And just to state maybe what isn't so obvious, we're one of the few, if not the only company out there that makes both camera technology and wireless microphone technology. And it's great when the two engineering groups kind of get together and they say, what would be cool that we could do together that spans both of our product lines and benefits the user? So let's try to come up with some of those things, and we'll talk about some of those as we go farther forward. You are all really advanced users, so I really don't need to go into this, but what we're really, a lot of people I talk to normally don't even understand the concept of what diversity is. But we talk about in our product line that we are true double tuner diversity. And it actually in just all but really one very small receiver that can switch to kind of antenna specific diversity mode, but everything else is true double tuner diversity. And I always try to explain to people what dropouts or how dropouts are caused and so on and so forth. But what is interesting that some people don't always know is they may have heard of obviously what diversity reception is, and that it's to prevent dropouts obviously and all that kind of stuff, but they may not have heard of the three common methods of doing diversity reception, being true double tuner diversity versus antenna only diversity versus what I referred to or is referred to as adaptive diversity. And for those of you that may be familiar, I apologize, but for those of you that may not, we use true double tuner diversity. So inside of even our smallest portable receiver, which has two independent channels, there's actually 4 tuners inside of here. And each channel with its 2 tuners has a comparator circuit that is constantly monitoring which one of those 2 tuners has the best signal. And it will switch between the tuners noiselessly and very, very often and on its own. And in this little display here, you can see with the 2 vertical bars are showing the tuner strength, and we're currently showing the B tuner is the strongest, and that little A and B will flicker back and forth. And again, 2 tuners for each of the 2 channels. However, sometimes there are designs out there that use antenna only diversity, which means a single tuner that share a pair of antennas and a switch happens between the 2 antennas. And then the final common method out there, at least in a lot of kind of ENG kind of gear, is sometimes referred to as adaptive diversity, where there may be a single tuner and a single real antenna, but an audio cable that's meant to feed the audio from the receiver out into a camera, for example, is asked to also act like a second antenna. But the 2 antennas are not, actually identical types or whatever. So that's just for those of you that may not have heard that. It's a good thing to make you aware of. In the world of digital, there's obvious benefits to digital. Certainly sound quality is one of them. But kind of reduction in susceptibility to interference by extraneous sources is one of them. On the left, we're showing what happens in analog wireless, where the ratio of your desired wireless, what's coming out of your transmitter, versus some background noise, the ratio has to be heavily weighted towards the wireless transmitter. In digital, it's actually kind of flipped. You can have a much smaller amount of desired signal being picked up by the receivers and much more undesired signal, but still the system can tune in specifically to the digital signal. So again, a lot less susceptible to random noises that are out there. Digital audio and digital wireless, certainly great sound quality. I do listening tests where I compare it to a wired microphone, and I expect a fair amount of you, if not most of you, have used digital wireless, and you do hear the benefits. You do hear the difference. You hear that clarity, that better sense of reality, of realism, and that's really important. But in order to get into the digital domain, you need A to D converters, and to get out of the digital domain, you need D to A converters, and converters can cause latency, and latency is not necessarily anybody's friend. So Sony, if you come from the video world, you know that we are, if nothing, a codec happy company. Every time we come out with a new line of cameras, there's a new video format that uses new codecs. And quite honestly, I love to brag about these guys. We've got brilliant mathematicians whose job it is just to think up and improve on the codecs that we use. So in our DWX wireless, we did not just go and kind of use an off-the-shelf codec that we might have been able to purchase maybe. But our mathematicians and our codec experts realize that there's always an interplay and a trade-off between latency and sound quality. And we came up with what we think is the best balance of those two. So we have low latency and we have high quality audio. And as we'll talk about in a bit, we even give the user the option of having a choice of multiple codecs in these units, and the choice is up to the user. We have gone to 96K converters, and I would say that one of the hugely beneficial things about digital wireless is, since we are sending a true digital bit stream, we no longer have to use the concept of companding schemes. We don't have to compress the audio at the transmitter before we make a little FM radio station, and we no longer have to re-expand it inside the receiver when it comes in and we receive it. In other words, what we do is we literally, at a transmitter, you take a microphone in with all of its high quality, frequency response, dynamic range, and you go in through a mic pre, and then that mic pre feeds an A to D converter, and the A to D converter then will create the bit stream that we send on traditional wireless FM frequencies. It gets picked up by the receiver digitally and transmitted out of the receiver into a camera, into a mixing desk, into wherever digitally. And that literally means that you can have one A to D at the front of the chain and one D to A at the theater speakers, at the home TV, on the stage PA speakers, wherever you are. And it's a single A to D and a final D to A. And we try to hold on to every ounce of audio quality possible. But also, because we don't really have any companding scheme, it means that when you take your precious microphone capsules, we hold on to the true sonic integrity of those capsules, and we allow you to broadcast that and do it from a great distance. You know, we'll talk a little bit later about one of our codecs that has, extra distance capability. But, historically, I've always just said, oh, yeah, we can do 300 feet. And it was just sort of a speck on a piece of paper. But a few years ago, I went out into our parking lot at our headquarters, and I took my cell phone playing some music, and I put it in the crook of a branch of a tree at one end of our parking lot next to our body pack transmitter. And I took our portable, I actually have one here, I took our portable receiver, loaded into a little battery operable kind of thing, and it's got a headphone jack, and I got in my car and I held this outside the window, plugged in my headphones, and I drove down the road until I heard my very first dropout. And when I heard that dropout, it was a sunny day and there were trees in the way, and certainly no bodies and bags of human water, as we like to say. But I got to the very first dropout. I noticed the building I was next to was actually at a curve in the road. And I went back on Google Earth, and I found out that Google Earth has a ruler tool. And I measured the distance from the transmitter and the tree to where I was within my car. and it was 1,437 feet, and I was just knocked out. Again, pretty day, trees only, no bodies, but I was, I don't no longer just say 300 feet. So we get that ability in this digital transmitter as well. But again, in this lower kind of little graphic here, you can see that with an analog system that has got potentially a companding scheme, or does have a companding scheme, a signal with a very sharp transient wavefront kind of gets the onset of that transient mushed out, and you lose that sense of reality, of true presence that our ears are used to hearing. And in digital, we don't have that. Another thing that we see as a benefit with digital audio transmission is that since we are using fully packetized digital data transmission and the true double tuner diversity, we can, amongst other reasons, we can fit up to 100% more wireless channels in a given 6 megahertz available white space or TV channel space. And that is a whole lot better, especially as the struggle that we're all going through with reduced spectrum and the FCC spectrum auction and all that. And as I mentioned before, using our new slot-in receiver and our rack receivers that I show here, we have this 148 megahertz tuning range that cover 24 6 megahertz TV channels at, and that gets us 5,384 channels when you go down. But of more note is on the lower left, the graph shows analog FM modulation. And even though we've historically been able to guarantee 8 channels of wireless in there to prevent intermod distortions, and they're all mathematically pre-tested and configured, they're not evenly spaced. And with digital modulation, very, very low amount of intermod artifacts are a problem, and they can be evenly spaced. And we've previously been able to guarantee only really 50% more, but we have a new mode, which is called our 375K high density mode. And here we can see both, US 6 megahertz TV channel bandwidth as opposed to the 8 megahertz in Europe. But in the US, we could always guarantee in analog land 8 channels. In traditional or DWX, we could always get 12. And in our new high density mode, you can have 16 channels of evenly spaced digital wireless frequencies, and with no loss in functionality, by the way. You are not restricted, you don't lose bandwidth, you don't lose frequency response, you don't lose the power output capability of your transmitters, no restrictions on that whatsoever. So on to some of the usability features, perhaps. Our engineers many, many years ago when we came out with our system said, wouldn't it be great if the wireless engineer, the photog maybe, doesn't have to run out to the talent's microphone to change something? Wouldn't it be great to be able to remote control the settings of the transmitter from the receivers or from the camera? And so they adopted the use of Zigbee, IEEE 802.15.4. And even in, yes.
Can I just ask one question on your previous slide before we get too far away from that?
Sure.
Is the power level in current DWX and DWX3 the same? You have the same output power?
We have actually, in the new transmitters, we have changed it. It used to be 1, 10, and 50, and now we've gone to 2, 10, and 25. And jumping ahead a little bit, one of the reasons we could do that is we've made our receiver circuits far more sensitive. So you can get the same range and the same quality at 25 milliwatts that you previously needed 50 milliwatts to do. And most of you, I think, understand that you don't think of digital power requirements as the same as you've experienced in the world of analog wireless. They're far more sensitive. And because we've also gone to 2, 10, and 25, it means that you've increased your battery life because you don't have to crank it up so high. Hopefully that answers that.
Is there a quality of service indicator on the meter so you know how good your digital signal is?
There absolutely is, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Terrific.
Good question.
Cool.
Good. So the cross remote capability and the Zigbee capability for an obvious thing means that if the cameraman or the audio engineer or starts hearing interference, he can scan for new frequencies or have frequencies, and he can send them out over the cross remote. And within a half second or less, you've changed that transmitter's setting to the new frequency along with the receiver. And with, as we'll talk about, we get about a 30-foot minimum range of even from our camera position, just that. When we talk about the rack receivers and the more network-based stuff, it goes far beyond that, but we'll talk about that. But even with our PC control software, what we refer to as wireless studios, when you do have the more involved setup, we can control up to 82 channels simultaneously, and you can change all the settings on all 82 at once or individually or whatever. Let's move on. Here are some of the things that we do change in the Zigbee, but also on the left we've got the transmitters, and the top blue arrow shows the additional information that we send to the receivers from the transmitters. Since we are sending a digital bit stream of audio, we have the ability to embed additional metadata about the transmitters and embed it in the digital audio bit stream and kind of, in a sense, piggyback it for free. Doesn't cost you anything in terms of battery power or anything like that. Shows up at the receiver, and you can look at that metadata and determine, the status of all those settings on the transmitter. So, for example, you can see what the audio input peak level is, how much time is remaining down to the minute. You can see what your low-cut filter frequency settings are at, what your mic attenuation level is currently set at, and any name that you may have assigned to that transmitter, be it Body Pack 1 or Bob or Mary or what have you. Now, going the other direction, though, from the receiver, once you have paired up a transmitter to a particular receiver channel through the Zigbee remote controllability, and that pairing process is extremely easy, and we have shortcut buttons to help you do that. But once they're done, they stay that way, even through power on and off cycles. They'll come back up paired, but you can call up the transmitters menu at the receivers, and you can then obviously scan for a new frequency at the receiver and send it out to the paired transmitter. You can also send out the power output level from low, mid to high at, from a remote distance. I like to say that, it's obviously necessary if you're maybe in certain applications, but one that I'm waiting to see if somebody has it is in ENG. If, you've got, your on-screen talent and he's maybe interviewing somebody, and that interview person gets asked a question and he takes off down the road and he's running far away, and your talent chases after him. Well, you could remotely put your talent's transmitter on high power and pick up everything he's saying or screaming as he's running down the road or hopping in a car. I don't think that's really a common use case, but I've thought about it. Anyway, as well, you can remotely change transmitter attenuation level, matching that microphone and that user to that input on that microphone transmitter. We can dial in 15 different low-cut filter settings as well as have none. But that means obviously it gets windy or you're working in a noisy factory and you want to dial in some low-cut filter settings while you're listening through the camera, for example. That's useful. And we also have the ability to remotely power down the transmitter and put it into a sleep mode that uses about 1/6 of your traditional battery power. And there are other things that we can do on the right here, but you can remotely, when you're using the rack receivers and the software, you can rename the transmitters, you can change their input level from microline level, you can change whether the plug-on transmitter has phantom power turned on or off, you can reset the accumulated battery transmitter time, you can change the audio codec mode, and obviously you have to change it for both the transmitter and the receiver so they match. And you can, put a locking function on the transmitter so talent doesn't screw things up by mistake. And you can change how the battery timer display mode looks, whether it is, percentage of time left or how many hours of time are left, or even a little bar graph that you may be used to. Now, that ability to remote control and power down the transmitter remotely from the camera position we kind of brought to an extra level. Here's one of those interesting little things that the design engineers kind of got together and came up with. But you can program all of our, most of our shoulder cams so that when it's called transmitter camera power sync, so that when you turn off the camera, it instantly turns off the transmitter and puts it into that sleep mode. It's either for everybody going on a lunch break, or you're taking down that setup and you're going to a new location and you just want to, power everything down. And when you get to the new location, you come back from lunch, you just power the camera back on, and it instantly wakes up the transmitter again. You can even assign that power down mode to some user assigned buttons and switches on the camera, although I generally feel those switches and buttons on the camera are very valuable and more better used for other functions than just turning the transmitter on and off. But this is an interesting use case of this power save, transmitter camera linking. On to specifically, we'll start out talking about this new little wireless receiver. This is a brand new model for us called the DWR-S03D, Digital Wireless Receiver, S for slot, 03 third generation, D for dual channel. And it is now all frequencies. We don't have blocks anymore. So this is all UHF from 14 up to 38 or 470 up through almost 616 in one unit. All of the steps, all the frequencies we talked about. But the big difference about this guy is we've actually changed the physical dimensions of this guy. For those of you that have been involved in our Sony shoulder cams over the years, you may know that the slot in the back of our cameras is a little bit wider than industry unislot standard size. It is a Sony slot size, and it allowed for us to take our previous generations of slot and digital wireless and put them in there and have a true digital audio connection times 2 channel and power this and send digital audio right into the video file, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, because the previous generation of receivers were a little bit too big, we couldn't fit them into other manufacturers' cameras and into a whole host of location sound, on-set kind of accessory models. So in this new DWR-S03D, we have gone to unislot size, which is a great thing. But unislot is a 25-pin connector. So we also offer the ability to just screw on with a couple of screws. This comes off, and you put on the 15-pin connector. And as you look in the lower right-hand corner of this picture, those 2 different connectors also come with the included appropriate escutcheon plates or collar pieces that properly allow you to mount that and fill up the hole into whatever application they're going in. So that unislot size is a big deal. However, the last item here on this page is back to that concept of making scanning even easier for photogs that are a little bit nervous about changing wireless frequencies. I've realized that people whose audio is not their main use case, they go, oh, well, I'm setting up here today and my wireless was working fine yesterday on the other side of town or in a different city. And what if I set up and I can't pair the 2 to get them on the same frequency again? I'm going to be in trouble. So I'm just going to power this up and hope the frequencies they're on are going to be okay because I don't want to take the risk. Well, not a great idea because sometimes they don't even listen with headphones and they just watch meters move on the camera and then they get yelled at by the editors when the editor hears all sorts of problems in the audio. But what we have done is it's always been very easy with our wireless to scan and find frequencies to the point that when you have a paired transmitter and a receiver channel, previously all you had to do was power on that channel while holding down the plus button. The unit would automatically start scanning, and when it found the quietest frequency, it would put it up on the display and say, do you want me to send that to the paired transmitter? And you simply go set. You say yes, and it gets sent out via Zigbee over to that paired transmitter, even though it may already be mounted on talent and up to 30 feet away. But then, as you probably all recognize, if you have a second transmitter you want to pair up, you have to leave that first transmitter powered on and then power up the second channel while holding its plus button. It will scan for the next available good frequency and hop over the previous one you just set up and then ask you if you want to set that frequency out to the other paired transmitter. And you go yes. Well, even that is sometimes a little bit too complicated for a lot of users. So we've instituted a new mode, which is double tuner scanning and pairing, which means that if you hold both the menu and the set button down simultaneously, as you can see the left two buttons on this display, the unit will go off from the shortcut button press, will go off and scan all, within the entire 14 to 38 frequency range. And in about 50 seconds, it will report back the two best frequencies it found. And that's great because you don't know what city you may be in tomorrow or wherever, and you may not know what white spaces are available, and it will find the two quietest ones and then ask you if you want to send those two frequencies out to your two paired up transmitters, two body packs, a body pack and a plug-on, whatever. And you go, yes, and in no time at all, those two transmitters are paired up and you're good to go. So that makes it even easier. So if a photog can't learn to hit two buttons at once, I'd be surprised, let's put it that way. Also, we have the high density multi-channel operation, 16 full channel quality digital audio channels in these receivers. We've added a new codec 4, we'll talk about codecs a little bit, and we've even reduced the latency to what we think is incredibly fast, the shortest we've certainly been able to do, which is down to 1.2 milliseconds latency with our new transmitters, and we get that out of codec mode 2. We've gone from 128-bit encryption up to 256-bit encryption, and as I mentioned earlier, that's either one-to-one or within a password group. And we also have on the receivers the user setting memory function, so you can leave the station if you were using these from a TV environment or whatever, but you can have a default setup that you custom make, and then you can change if you need to, and instantly get back to all the settings you like. And all of these devices have OLED displays. In this here, we're talking now about the new body packs and the transmitter side. We have a body pack, which I would kind of refer to as a micro body pack. It's called a DWT, Digital Wireless Transmitter, B for body pack, 03 third generation, and R for rechargeable, DWT-B03R. I know it rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? However, it's also wideband in one very small unit. These units are about more than 25% smaller than our traditional AA battery operated ones, which we'll look at on the next couple of pages. But it has the selectable high density channel plan. It's very small, it's lightweight, it's magnesium body, it has rounded corners, and we even designed it so that it is light in color, because we got information from the theater world that when you may have a whole host of body packs sitting in a tray off in the wings of the theater, you don't want them to be black because you want to be able to see them to a degree, even though it's kind of dark in the wings. So assuming that these are going to be hidden anyway, we decided to go with a lighter color. We have all 4 codec choices down to the 1.2 milliseconds, and these are also rain, sweat, and spray proof. We have given them an IPX4 and 5 rating so that every connection, every door, everything is gasketed. Using these rechargeable batteries, we use little Sony CyberShot camera batteries, and there are millions of these in the world to supply and be used with all of our little Sony CyberShot cameras. But they're not proprietary camera batteries. They're quite small, they're very inexpensive, and we get approximately 7 hours of life in our mid-power level on these. They fit into it, it's rechargeable. Obviously, cross-remoteable, these all have the Zigbee remote control once you pair them up, and they use, because of the small size, we've gone to a LEMO-style, 3-pin LEMO-style lav connector, and it's compatible with a new lavalier I'll talk about a little bit later called an ECM90, kind of a very interesting lav design. We also have those of you that use Sony Wireless, we've had this body pack, and this has now been updated to a DWT-B30. And this uses AA batteries, alkalines or lithium or nickel metal hydride, or obviously rechargeables. And they also can have the full frequency spectrum, and they cover all the 25 kilohertz steps and high density channel operation mode, latency, all the other stuff here. We also have a user memory setting here so that you can set these up to easily be switched back to your default setting. And that's useful I can think for a few. Sometimes photogs in an ENG environment, some stations send all their photogs out with pre-assigned frequencies. Other stations send them out and say, go out and scan and find your best one wherever you happen to be or whenever you happen to be. But for those that go out with a pre-assigned one, this allows them to instantly recall the TV station's required or requested setup. But if they run into challenges in the field, they can scan for new frequencies and get on with their business and instantly go back. We use 24-bit 96K converters, and there's even a little door on the side that we can use a USB power supply off of a cell phone charger or a little airplane style charger to keep your cell phone operating on transatlantic flights. And obviously it is a Zigbee remote controllable. We also have our plug-on transmitters, and these are in the N series. I will expect that they will at some point be updated to this new third generation, but currently they are available in 2 frequency blocks, 14 to 25, and also what we refer to as a 30A block, which goes from UHF 30 up to 36, or another 42 megahertz. So 12 megahertz in the lower block and 42 megahertz, 12 UHF TV channels or 72 megahertz in the 14 block, and 42 megahertz or 7 UHF TV channels in this upper block. It also has 48-volt phantom powering, which is great for boom pole applications with condenser microphones and shotgun microphones, but also for certain stick microphones. Also OLED display, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here is the DWM-02N. This is our digital wireless microphone handheld series, and this supports our N series enhancements and supports interchangeable microphone capsules, the same blocks that I just referred to, and is also remote controllable. Also has an OLED display underneath the handle, which can be unscrewed and lowered down. And notice that it comes with these little color-coded rings that you can attach to the bottom, and that may make for determining which mic a particular talent may be holding on stage. That's up to you. We offer 3 of our own capsules, cardioid condenser capsule, and as well as a couple of dynamic capsules, super cardioid and wide cardioid, but these are industry standard threads. If you love certain other capsules, by all means go along with them. And again, to reiterate what I said much earlier, is since this is digital transmission, we hold on to the sonic integrity of those capsules. We don't restrict the low frequencies. We don't do anything like that. You get a very wide frequency range from 20 up to 22, so 22K, so have no fear. So let's move on to our studio or rack unit. By the way, there was a question earlier about being able to see digital bitstream quality. Let me see if I have a shot that will show you this. Sorry about this. Okay, here, if you look at this display, and next to the vertical bars of transmission screen, there's a little horizontal, it's a little bar graph that says QL. And that's actually a moving bar graph. It's 5 segments in this display, but if you shut off the transmitter, you'd start seeing the little bar segments disappear as the display moved from right to left. Turn on the transmitter again, and it would start populating. So this is actually a moving segment display. Obviously, in this display, you get to see what grouping you're in, what free TV channel and which wireless channel within that channel, as well as a specific frequency, audio levels, and as you can step through on the receiver display to look at both of your receiver channels as well as both of your transmitter channels, as well as some system displays. That's what else you can see on that display. So going back, sorry about that.
Couple of other questions came up.
Yes, Peter.
Are the S03D super slot compatible?
Yes, they are, absolutely.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that. I'll mention it now, but we have been working quite closely with both Aton for their Kantar mixers, as well as with Sound Devices for compatibility at a super slot level, so that they are duplicating a lot of our screens, so that they can control not only our receivers, but the paired transmitters from their mixer recorders. Great question.
Does the handheld mics have flag extensions in case you put a flag on it?
Physical flag, there are no
Yeah.
flag extensions. You know, we have used, I wouldn't say this is the right solution, but we have used some third-party little extensions that get you, you know, maybe another inch, but because they add an external switch on audio. But,
Right.
you know, that'll get you a little extra space. But, you know, I would say, even though I like the look of both of the, you know, both this and a traditional stick mic,
Right.
like this, we do offer this cardioid microphone, excuse me, this dynamic microphone called an F112. You know, that gets used a lot more often with plug-on transmitters, and there's plenty of room for a flag there. But even though I won't go in, yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. Can any of these transmitters or receivers load spare frequencies in them? So when you switch to a new frequency, they can be pre-coordinated by your local coordinator to work with the rest of the people on site?
Well, we do have in some of the new transmitters, as I mentioned, we do have the the memory capability. So you can always store a memory function. You can also create custom groups. It requires doing it on a little PC app, and you can load in custom groupings. But we do have auto frequency stuff that we'll talk about in just a few slides on the rack receivers.
So if you had, let's say, 2 or 3 wireless you were using on an ENG crew, and you were given a dozen frequencies by the local frequency coordinator, they could make a group of those and stick it in all the transmitters. And that way, everybody would have a legal pre-coordinated frequencies list they could change to. They'd have to talk amongst themselves, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it's certainly not going to be talent that's going to be changing that, and you would do it. Yeah, obviously, doing from the receiver, but you can always dial in a specific frequency at the receiver down to, again, that 25 kilohertz resolution. You can go into our upper order groups that give you access to 231 tunable channels per 6 megahertz, and you can literally just send it out to the paired transmitter.
Right, but let's say you were working in a big event, and you got a dozen frequencies from the coordinator that were yours to use.
I see what you're saying.
Load them into your receiver and have the camera operators be able to randomly pick whichever one they wanted to use, rather than have them do a scan, which would mess up everybody else's coordination.
Right. So all I can really say is it's a great idea, and we can do it through making custom groups, but you have to, again, make a little PC kind of software app choice and load the custom group additionally into the receivers, and then
But you can put a whole group into the receiver.
You can put a whole group into the receiver, and you can step through the group and then just send it to the transmitter. So it's doable. Interesting. Great question.
Would since there's no companding involved, would these systems be good to use with sound systems like Smart or anything like that? Because there's no changing of the level?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, that is one of the obvious benefits. And, you know, the riding gain is not really a thing I hear about hardly ever, even in location sound applications.
Well, older wireless that have companding and expanding change the gain of the mic, and you can't use it Smart because of that.
But obviously, no gain going on here. Absolutely, I mean, no companding modes, clearly.
Right.
Yes.
You said the microphone push to talk button expansion. Is that also a Sony product?
We do make one, or we have made them in Japan on what's referred to as a tokaran basis. And so we don't offer them normally for sale here in the US, but if somebody was really interested in the Sony version of that and could wait a little bit of time to get them, I'd certainly entertain, and Japan has, you know, kind of offered that they could do that possibly. But there are other,
We're able to make a device that would switch the audio to a different output on the receiver or something like that.
No, I know that's something that Shure does, but we don't do that. We just really mute the capsule and that's it.
Oh, okay.
So I know that Shure has that capability. And
Kevin Parrish points out that he's had the problem with interviewees running away during a candidate event, and people not being able to get their transmitters back, and it basically comes back to them in a FedEx box, which is a really far transmission distance. So normal users of the unit, if they don't have a laptop to program, how are we going to go through how they're actually programmed right on the devices? Because some people have commented it's really hard to do on the devices.
Well, I would say that in the there's currently or previously no direct frequency entry mode, but I have been told that that is likely coming. And so that would be an interesting thing, but I can't promise that yet, but
So
that's one way to do it.
You can only pick group and channels.
You can do direct frequency entry, but yet again, not something that we currently do. And as well, you know, in normal kind of modes, default, we space channels 125 kilohertz apart from one another.
Right.
So within a particular TV channel, 6 megahertz, we offer 47 different frequencies.
Right.
And we also subdivide that, into bands, which are 4 TV channels wide. So when you do a full band scan, you're doing 188 channels within that 4 bands, like 14 through 17 or 18 through 21 or what have you. However, when you go into a higher order group that gets you down to the 25 kilohertz spacing, you would have to normally scroll through 231 different frequencies in a channel.
You can't actually enter a specific frequency?
You can scroll to it. You can, not currently, but as I said, that is what I'm hoping for.
Oh, definitely.
So for direct frequency entry would be a really nice thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
because when you get your frequencies from a frequency coordinator, he's not going to have them necessarily to fit your group.
And I agree. You have to know that the frequency he gives you is within TV channel 31 or whatever, and you have to know to go to that range to scroll through the 231 of them to get to the one you want. I totally agree.
Yeah.
You're spot on.
Will this product line be in the 941 to 960 band as well, be available?
You're hitting me up on all the questions. We don't have any word on that currently, but our UWP-D wireless product line that will go to after this is available currently in the 941 to 960 range. So we can talk about that as well. And that also, is usable, but I can't say that the DWX is currently available yet in DWX, or if it will be. So.
Okay, cool. That's all the questions
Good.
for now.
Okay, so we're great. So we're now off into the land of our rack receiver. DWR, digital wireless receiver. Our second R is for rack, 3rd generation dual channel. And since we had just sort of talked about the QL meter, if you look on each of these displays in the upper left-hand corner, you see all these tiny little dots. And that is also a moving quality bitstream level meter. And here it is up on the right, kind of blown up a bit. So it will show you if you turn off the transmitter or the QL drops, you will start seeing it go down. And you really, as we'll talk about in another couple of slides, you really have to, should be concerned when it gets down to 1 dot, roughly 20%. But, I refer to this maybe since I sell these a lot to news studios, but certainly, great for theater and for, live sound and all that kind of stuff. I refer to it as a dual channel news studio rack receiver, but certainly not restricted to that application. It has all the codecs. It has redundant Dante. So we have dual Dante Brooklyn 2 chips inside of here. We, for, audio over IP and AES67, interoperability, especially as we move into, ST2110 broadcast world. And we also have multiple tuners inside here, 2 tuners per each of the 2 channels for true double tuner diversity. And we also have something new in this series called X dimension diversity, which is in both of these, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We as well have, if you look on the bottom back panel scene, you can see 2 legends. The top legend is for dual antenna operation, where we would have the 2 outside connectors for the antenna inputs for A and B, and the inside 2 are for loop through to loop out to the second rack, and so on. Then you can loop through to 8 racks total, or 16 channels. However, if on a utility menu over here, you select this to be into 4 antenna diversity, then you can hook up 4 individual antennas to here and use all 4 internal tuners to make 1 large tuner channel per rack. And so that gives us the 4 antenna diversity. Again, it's available via menu selection. And obviously then you give up the ability to loop through, but there's any number of third-party distribution systems that can help out in that. We have AES 256-bit encryptions, and I always just like to remind, especially everybody, I'm sure most people on this call realize it, but sometimes some people don't, that the FCC guidelines go into full effect in July of this year, and time to make sure you have legal frequencies. While we're looking at the front panel, just to demystify this a little bit, there's a utility button on the lower left, and that calls up on this display all the menus that make settings that are common to the whole receiver rack. And you use this knob, rotary and push-click knob, to scroll through them, whether it be, things like IP addressing and the channel ranges and display and all sorts of settings here. I won't go into all of them here, but that gives you access again to how much power you're sending out to active antennas, for example. That's another good one that people like to know about. We can send out none, 9 volts or 12 volts, depending on what active antennas you may be using. And obviously not have any power if you loop down, if you only pair 1 pair of antennas or antennas to the first connectors, and then you do send out power to those antennas. Actually, whether, in our case, whether you add any boost at the amplifiers and the antennas or not, but then if you're going to loop out to the second rack, third rack, fourth rack, you don't want any power coming out of those connectors.
So the on there, the remote antenna, that's for the remote control of the transmitter, correct?
Well, what happens is, yes, that is normally we supply the rack receiver with like a little 1-inch stubby, which is the Zigbee antenna that gets you about a 60-foot diameter circle right around this antenna, right around this receiver. But we have, external networked antennas that you can hook up to this as well, and actually have up to 9 different 60 diameter circles that you can place on a network over a PoE, but we'll talk about that in a few. Okay. So just back to the display here, or to the actual front panel, monitor on each of these 2 channels, and the 2 channels are kind of identical at this point. Monitor will bring up that channel to the shared headphone jack with a volume knob, and hitting the monitor button can be simple as doing it locally, 1 or both channels. They can be channel 1 in the left ear, channel right in the right ear, both mono down the middle. Or if you're in kind of Dante mode and you have a whole rack of these, you can have just 1 headphone in one of these rack headphone jacks, and hitting the monitor button on any of the other racks will route that up either on a solo basis or on a multiple channel all at the same time, and mix them together through Dante. As well, that display and the knob can be changed to all looking and controlling receiver functions by hitting the RX button. But if you want to see the paired transmitters menus and everything you can change on it, you would hit the display and the knob to now be the transmitter control. And the remote button simply helps you pair up a transmitter and a receiver. if you want to do it locally here. You can also do it through the PC software and all sorts of stuff. But it will allow you, and to give you an idea how simple it is, on a transmitter, you have to first make a transmitter discoverable in order to set up this Zigbee pairing. So you can do it through a menu, but that's like too much trouble. So the shortcut to making a transmitter discoverable by a receiver is to power on the transmitter while holding down its minus button. The transmitter then wakes up and says, scanning, I'm available. Go look for me with your receiver. And then you go to this remote button and you go scan, find the transmitters. You click it in, and within a couple of seconds generally, it will look and find that transmitter and flash it up on the screen. And if you actually have multiple transmitters all in discoverable mode, it'll allow you to select through multiple transmitters and choose the one that you want to pair to. You just click in on the knob, and it will have the receiver and the transmitter talk to each other over Zigbee and set up the Zigbee pairing, and then it'll say done. And that's as simple as it is. And once you're paired, then you're good to go. Now, if you look at this display here, I know it's kind of small, but right under the INT that's showing you your digital sync, whether you're referenced to external sync reference for digital or it's using the internal. But right below it is two little cross arrows, one pointing in each direction with 3 bars next to it. That shows you that you are paired up to your paired transmitter, and it's showing you the signal strength of the Zigbee pairing. Right below that is showing you your transmitter is on its mid-power output level, and then here we're showing that showing the battery time on that transmitter. And again, that can be set to a bar graph or to percentage left or down to hours and minutes. Of course, you've got vertical audio levels showing peak levels, and on the far left under the QL bitstream, you've got the A and the B tuner showing you the relative strength and whether it's selected the A or the B, and it'll flicker back and forth. As well, under the utility menu, you can go into the alert menu, and it will determine what settings, what problems will cause these alert lights and the alert light to come on. And it will alert you if the QL drops, or if your batteries are getting low on your transmitter, or if your RF level is too hot or too low, and so on and so forth. So that just gives you an idea of some of the things this unit is capable. And not to mention maybe the obvious, but on the back we have put in AC output connectors, and we provide little, I think they're 18-inch AC jumper cables. So you can feed the top receiver with AC and then loop down, loop down, loop down, and so on and so forth. So that's how we do that. Okay, moving on. These rack receivers, obviously, depending on where they are in the world, they can cover a 244 megahertz range, but in the US, they cover the 14 to 38, also the high density mode, cross remote, so on and so forth. Here is a lovely installation for a theater application where they had 38 channels on stage for a great big theater show, and that was wonderful. Okay, I think some of you will probably find this interesting. So traditionally, diversity reception chooses which of the two tuner channels are stronger based on level, but our engineers felt that they could do better, and so they introduced in this new series something called X dimension diversity. And what it really does is, as we say here, it prevents burst error by synchronization loss. It's based on a new algorithm that plural elements such as space information, time information, RF signal level, digital data synchronization information are obtained from either the 2 or 4 antenna situation and blended with our original method for highly accurate calculation of diversity switching. So again, time, digital data synchronization information, and phase. So if you look at this display over here, and don't forget that we have the QL meter, here below is a view from our wireless studio software. You guys would you obviously think of Shure's, wireless workbench, but we have our own version called Wireless Studio. And one of the things you can do is you can look at any individual receiver or multiple receivers at once and look at individual A tuner level, B tuner level within that channel, obviously diversity switching, or the combined diversity output, and you can look at them individually all together. But the other thing that you can look at is a green line, and the green line represents the bitstream quality level. And you can see in this case, or in past generation of DWX, these were all hits. And error correction normally takes care of all of this, but if it drops down to about the 20% level, generally the error correction may not be able to handle it. But with our new X dimension diversity, we've taken that same situation and reduced the number of QL bitstream quality hits dramatically. And so that's a big deal. So obviously reception is key to all wireless use, and it's key to what we do. So our engineers paid a lot of attention to it. As well, they upped and created a much higher dynamic range RF circuit, which can reverse RF overload for more stable operation. That means if you have a lot of undesired signals, maybe on different frequencies between your signal and the antenna, it can cause problems. As well, if people coming from a world of analog transmission, especially in an ENG environment, always go, I'm going to crank up my transmitter with its maximum power and bludgeon my way through with 50 milliwatts of power. That'll save me. Well, that's not necessarily the right thing to do in the world of digital transmission, because you could overload the front end of the receivers and hurt the quality of the bit stream. So especially at shorter distances, I always recommend 2 milliwatts or 10 milliwatts, and that's usually way more than enough. However, this high dynamic range RF circuit even helps prevent problems like that. And we have improved our RF dynamic range by almost 10 dB, or approximately 10 dB. So that's something that we have done. And again, we have a little RF overload indicator. When you get too close or you have a problem, and in that case, it's staying green, which is a good thing. Okay, workflow improvements, especially in an environment like a news set where there may be multiple news shows all day long from morning till night. Talent obviously has to put on their body pack, and something you don't necessarily want to worry about is constantly swapping out AA batteries all day long and worrying about that. So in our new micro body pack, that DWP-B03R, since they are rechargeable, we offer a recharging station. And that recharging station is called the BC DWX1. But if you can see from the picture, you can put multiples of them together. You can put them in a little rack slide out drawer. And they even on the back or the bottom of these units have little slots where you can use cable ties to physically attach multiples together so they don't rattle around. But basically, these, since they are recharging bays, need to get power. And they can get power either from an external AC 12-volt power supply, or they could get power over Ethernet, PoE, from a switch that you may be using to tie all your receivers together and your PC, running the wireless studio and. But you can power these over PoE. Now, the physical thing that's nice is you can literally pull the body pack, the talent can pull the body pack off of their belt, and these have almost no heat to them because they're very low heat generating and OLED displays and so on and so forth. But even leaving the little LEMO connected lob on there, they can just click it right into this little charger bay, and they can put 2 of them in there, or take external batteries if they want to pull the battery out or have backup batteries and charge those. And because they click in and they're held in place, you can even mount this on a wall, or if you're in a truck, they're not going to come shaking loose as you're bouncing down the road. However, the important thing is we offer freebie software that allows you to give each of these their own unique IP address. And that means when you are running these off of our wireless studio, you can call up a viewer little display that shows you the charging status of each of these little units. And you can see some maybe at 35%, some be at 80%, some might be at 100%. And literally, you may not know which one of these units inside of this rack, there are a bunch of them, is the one that's at 100%. So even though you could go up to it and you could see 4 LEDs, if they're all populated, you're pretty sure that's the one that's, fully charged up. But back at the PC, you can, on the GUI, you can click on the blink button, and that will then cause on that IP addressable display those 4 LEDs to sit there and flash at you. And then you're sure that the one you're picking out is at 100%. You put it on talent, he goes, does the new news. When he's finished, you pull it off, you put it back in the charging station, and you're ready for the 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock news. So that gives you the ability, and also the order of how these are shown up on the display has to do just with the order following the number of the IP address. So hopefully that makes sense. But it's something that makes the workflow of a daily operation with rechargeable body packs easier. And that was the intent of the designers, to give that happen. Okay, some new capabilities that we added about a year ago almost in this wireless rack receiver that we'll talk about briefly are automatic frequency change mode, automatic channel coordination even without a PC, output swap function, graphical spectrum analyzer, and even a new codec, Codec 4. But the one that you're probably most familiar with and interested in, I would say, is auto frequency change mode. Our engineers felt that it might not be necessary or economically that attractive to have a whole external frequency scanning module or mode or rack unit whose job it is to just sit there and scan. It can be great, and I don't take anything away from those kinds of units. But what our engineers decided to do was make it so that any one of these rack receivers could take one of its channels and dedicate it as a scanning host. And since all of these will all be interconnected via a switch on a network, they all recognize each other, and you tell that host, go ahead, and all your job is to sit there and scan and always have, at that place and time, have backup frequencies available. And should any of the client channels run into a problem, the host will send out the new quietest frequency out to that client unit, and that unit will change its receiver, and then it will send that frequency out to its Zigbee paired transmitter, and you're back online very, very quickly. And then the host will go back to happily continue to scan for other frequencies. So that's auto frequency change mode. But from an investment point of view, when you look at the cost of an entire rack and you assume that, only half of that rack is being kind of, assigned to that functionality, it's maybe an attractive way of having this function work. Okay, auto channel coordination. Previously, you could certainly go to an individual receiver channel, and when you had that display in that receiver, under the receiver control, you can go through and tell it to scan or what group to be in and all the other settings that are in the receiver's submenu. But you can tell it to scan in a particular group or wide open group or whatever. And after it finishes the scan, it will give you a listing of actually 24, I believe, of its quietest channels and show you the amount of background noise it encountered in dB ranges from 0 up to about 20 dB of background noise, and show you the quietest one first. You click on it and it asks if you want to send it out to the paired transmitter, and you go yes. And then you can leave that transmitter on as we historically it is done, and then go to the second channel and scan again, and it'll hop over that first transmitter. You just keep adding transmitters with that process. Well, now we have a mode with, and I should mention that we also have the ability, if you're running the Wireless Studio software, to go into channel planning menu mode, where it will automatically see all the receiver channels and transmitters that are paired up to it and know how many channels it has to scan for. It will do scanning, and we'll look at the screens of those in a couple of minutes, and it will find the quietest frequencies, ask you if you like the software's selection, and you can modify it or just say, yeah, go ahead, I like what you found, and it will blow the selections into all the paired up transmitters, into all the paired up receivers, and then the receivers will send those out to the paired transmitters. Well, you have to be running the PC software to do that, and now we're able to do all of that channel coordination without an external PC. So it again tells one of the receivers to do the scan, and because they're all interconnected via a switch or a hub, they will see each other, and then it will ask you whether you want to send out all of the best frequencies in a particular group, if it suggests that, out to the receivers in the network, and then them in turn out to their transmitters. And you can do that automatically, or when it says, here's the list I found, you can just say, okay, blow them onto all of them, or you can do them manually if you'd like. So that's auto channel coordination without a PC. We have also added a function that I think is probably more for theatrical application, which is output swap function, which is simply to say that many times you've got critical talent that may be wearing 2 transmitters and 2 lavs. And in an environment where somebody may step on one of those frequencies intentionally or by mistake or whatever, and both of those are feeding into a rack receiver off to the side of the stage, and those 2 are feeding out to a front of house mixer, where the mixer may have said, I don't have enough faders on the top panel to devote 2 faders to every critical talent. Let me bury one on my second layer. Well, now what happens if you have a problem? Well, it's usually either up to the monitor guy on stage or wherever to either swap patch cables or something like that to make the second channel go out to the top fader in front of house. Well, we've now made it so that you can hit just both of the 2 knobs on the front of the display, and it will perform an in-unit channel output swap. Take channel 1, send it out 2, and take channel 2 and send it out 1, and it's automatically on that top panel fader out in the front of house position. We have also added a on-display or on-unit graphical spectrum analyzer, and it can show scan results. And you can also, just tell the unit perform a scan, and as you do, this little cursor line will scroll across, and it will show you the hills and the valleys that we're all used to seeing, and then it will allow you to use the knob to scroll the cursor line into a valley, click in on the knob, and it will send that out to the paired up transmitter. So that's also a good way of showing up on site, even if you don't have, like a spectrum analyzer with you, to get a visual idea of what is available in any particular frequency range. I mentioned earlier that we have multiple codecs, and since we introduced this system, 12, 13 years ago, or whatever it is at this point, we had a Codec 1, and I really liked Codec 1. Codec 1 to me is very, live sounding, if you will, but it had about 3.4 milliseconds of latency. Again, not horrible, really tiny. It's the difference of me standing a few feet in front of you. But for on stage talent that's being fed back in through their headsets or in your monitors, anything you can get rid of can be an improvement. Also in Europe, where we have a lot of European concert halls and opera houses using our digital wireless because they loved the way the stuff sounded, they also requested a slightly sweeter sounding codec, if you will. So we introduced Codec 2, and it's a really, really subtle difference, but that's something. So Codec 2 reduced latency and also subtly changed the sonic quality to a different sound, your choice. We have also Codec 3, which we'll look at on the next slide, but we also have Codec 4, and in these new body packs, the B03R and the B30, we have reduced these latencies quite low. Here is Codec 3. Codec 3 is interesting because it adds an extra layer of error correction. And if you look at this little graph on the upper left, I'd say it adds about, through that extra layer of error correction, an extra 20% or 30% of distance of transmission length because of Codec 3. And, we obviously view that as important in large outdoor applications like golf broadcasting, or if you're a Formula One racing and your talent or your stand-up talent is way, way far away, having that extra range can really help out. So that's what Codec 3 does, but it also, because it can help prevent burst errors, and that burst errors I find can really help out in preventing walkie-talkie interference on location sound sets, for example, where walkie-talkies are obviously at 4 watts, 5 watts, and they can cause problems. But helping prevent that from getting through is another really good thing about Codec Mode 3. Okay, so we are really taking a long time here. I apologize for how long this is taking, but I'll start trying to blow through this more quickly. Our wireless studio software, I mentioned the channel planner, channel advisor, allows you to do full frequency spectrums, and it'll show you what's available and where there are problems in red and minimum levels that you can set and so on and so forth. And you can enter in other TV broadcast waves beforehand, other frequencies that are used by other wireless, by other manufacturers. And it'll also obviously show you what frequencies are detected via the channel scan. It'll also it'll come up with suggested channels based on whether you only have digital wireless, which allows for far less intermittent artifacts, or have to maintain compatibility with analog wireless. It'll suggest groups that will allow for that as well. So in our wireless systems, just to reiterate, we have a 00 group, or group 00, which is a wide open, all frequencies, all channels, and then we have groupings 01 through 09, which have to do with which white space channels are available in a certain area, whether it's only one white space channels or a combination of 2 or even a combination of all 4 for maximum number of simultaneous frequencies. And then we have what are called D groups, D1 through D9, which means that you only have digital wireless and you can fit even more channels in there. And then we have the higher order groups, which get into the 25 kilohertz spacing, et cetera, et cetera. In our wireless studio software, we have multiple tab control. So for example, if you look, it's really hard to see on this lower left, I really apologize, but you can see on the left a listing of all of our receivers, and you can even expand those to show plus all their paired transmitters. And you can see up above the main area here, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on and on and on and on. And you can drag and drop individual combinations of various wirelesses on a page-by-page basis. So whether it's a scene-by-scene or weather or news or, like different band setups or whatever it has been, but you can change which transmitters and receivers are usable on a page-by-page basis. Now, once you have that page-by-page basis, you can also go up, and if you look at the top view here, say within a group, we have the ability to not only control all transmitters and receivers individually, but you can control them via groups. So you can power save, you can put them all to sleep or change their RF power or input level or mic attenuation or low cut filter settings. You get the idea. So you can choose and customize this list up here to control all you want. As well, you have what's called a simple status viewer, so that you can, on just your local monitor or on an extended monitor, all these windows can be put up anywhere. You can monitor very quickly what is, the name of the channel, the bitstream quality level, if there are any dips in it, what the A and B tuner strength is, the battery conditions, audio levels, et cetera, et cetera. And that's very useful. On the lower right here, I'm showing the 3 transmitters reception, we call it a chart grapher. So you can see not only the green line, which is the bitstream quality line, and here it's fully 100%, but that's great, but you can see the individual blue, red, and purple lines of the A channel, the B channel, and the combination diversity channel. We have error logging, we have all the traditional stuff that you want to see, and on a per channel basis, you can see all the individual things you want to see. We also can control up, as I mentioned way at the beginning, up to 82 channels simultaneously, and you can have up to 6 PCs all hooked up to the network simultaneously. And obviously through Dante, you can do individual customization of which, channels and receivers go where, but in this, basic setup of the network, you can have multiple receivers multiple PCs all hooking up these and controlling these if you'd like simultaneously.
Andy, let me get a couple of questions in here. When you mentioned Dante there, are the Dante outs AES 67 compatible or SMPTE 211030 compatible?
They are AES67 because Brooklyn 2 chips allow for the local Dante to be converted into AES67. And then the ST2110 compatibility thing is more a function of the enterprise, as I understand it, the enterprise level of the, the particular broadcast station that's looking to tie all this together. And so there, specific intricacies of AES67 and ST2110, and who can be deemed to be a clock master over the whole, and there's all those kind of intricacies that, obviously I don't think we should go into here, but yes, okay.
What does Codec 3 do to the latency?
Yeah, very good question. It makes it top out at about 4 milliseconds. So again, not crazy by any means.
So it's a little more, it's a little more than 1.
It's a little bit more, and that 4 milliseconds, I think is tied to, I'd have to check whether that actually went down in our latest generation of transmitters, because the new body packs have the lowest latency. So there is a chance, I apologize, I don't have the answer, whether Codec 3 gets reduced as well.
In your channel swap function with a bunch of receivers networked together, can you do the swap over Dante?
I have no idea. I think it's probably a front panel hit the both button thing.
So it's not a remote control thing. Okay.
Not that I'm aware. I've never heard that question. I can certainly ask that, but yeah. Great question. Now, I mean, why wouldn't you do that via Dante some other way instead of swapping it that way? Because you've got control routing at that level as well.
Is there any difference in charge time between powering your charger with PoE versus AC adapter? And how much wattage do you need on your PoE budget for each charger?
I don't have an answer. I apologize. I don't have an answer. And I know that we've done installations with, I've seen installations with 8 of those racks. So 16 channels on PoE, I think, but I can't quote you. I'm sorry. That's another good question I have to answer.
The TX battery indicator, is there a place to set in the software what kind of battery you're using?
There is, absolutely. So on the AA batteries, we can set it so that the meters react appropriately, whether it's alkaline or lithium or nickel metal hydride or whatever. So, and we offer 4 choices there. Another great question.
Is there a Sony document somewhere that details which transmitter receiver model numbers and firmware have what kind of frequency steps? In other words, basically
everything is 25 kilohertz capable these days.
Okay.
Everything, and has been for quite some time. Even our UWP-D wireless can get down to 25 kilohertz spacing.
Do they all basically have the same groups available to each one?
They all have similar groups, except that the digital ones also have D groups, D1 through 9, and then they also have higher order groups that allow for the 375 kilohertz spacing, which is the high density mode, and those aren't available in the UWP-D models.
Do the camera features like power only work with Sony cameras and other cameras with super slot? Work only with Sony cameras or any other cameras with super slot?
Are you talking about the power, the transmitter camera? Yeah. You can always go to the receiver menu itself. You can just right on the receiver and call up the receiver 1 or receiver 2 menu and go down to, like power save mode and go to sleep or active. But the thing of turning off the camera and on, that's specific to Sony cameras.
Right. Okay. That's pretty much it for right now. Continue.
Great. Okay. So let's see. In this case, we're just showing a property list wireless device control function, a specific to a receiver and a pair of transmitters. So, you call this up on the Wireless Studio software and you can control all of these via, just the GUI. Basically, turning encryption on and off and what frequency and active or clear channel scanning and what codec modes and whether, on your micro line level and the output of the receiver, whether it's mic or line level, and ground lift or not, and so on and so forth. The name of the transmitter is a lot easier to enter via a QWERTY keyboard than with little push buttons on the transmitters. You can remotely put it to sleep. You can change its power output, microline level, mic attenuation, 15 different low-cut filter settings, phantom power, reset or look at the actual count-up battery timer. You can turn on a 1 kilohertz signal generator. That can be useful. Power switch lock or not, power switch on, and whether the remote is actually turned on or whether you wanted to go into pairing mode. Let's see. So here is the Zigbee antennas. These are called RMU01s. These are for extending the range of the cross remote. Up to 9 of these can be located on a network, and they can be locally powered via wall wart, or they can be also powered over PoE. And we also offer the freebie software. All the wireless studio software is all free, and this stuff is. Anybody wants to have a look at it, just send me an email. I'll send you the software. But you can give any of these their own unique IP address, so that when a transmitter gets within, the range of one of these transmission antennas, then the system knows that it can control that transmitter by sending commands out to that specific antenna. So that's the RMU01. We also make our own antennas. We have obviously, these are not obviously, these the AN20 and the AN01 are active antennas, but the AN01 specifically is full range. It covers all the FCC legal stuff, where the AN20 is a much narrower range. We have a passive antenna, ground plane antenna called an AN57, and it comes supplied with little different length antennas depending on the frequency range. So the active ones they want to have it, there should have power sent to them, even though you don't use the little screwdriver adjust locally to boost the power output. But on here, on the AN01, you can adjust it from 0 dB boost, 10 dB boost, or 18 dB boost as required. Okay. So we also make an antenna divider called the WD850, but there's so many great antenna divider products on the market as well these days, and I've used them myself. So I mentioned earlier that we have been kind of paying a lot of attention to the location sound business, such there is so much wireless going on there, and we've been working with both Atton and Sound Devices through super slot integration to be able to remote control our digital wireless through their systems, and that is very exciting. We've also, have been really trying to promote the benefit of digital audio on location, since almost 70% of so many productions are capturing audio of actors through booms. And the sound of a boom shotgun microphone when it's digital is just, to me, so much more real sounding than it is when you're using analog wireless. So it's I think a good way, if you're currently using analog wireless and location sound, to buy, just a simple plug-on transmitter and a simple portable receiver for your rig, and have your boom pole or boom poles just, try that digitally, and you will go, wow, that really just sounds, I think, so much better, as well as the remote controllability and all that kind of stuff. So try that. And here was just an application of a cart, as well as, kind of putting it in bags and so on and so forth. Just pictures here. Here we actually had somebody that built up an 18-channel rig with a pair of, 688s from Sound Devices. I thought that was a really great application. And we make little wireless adapters that will take our receivers, slot them in, and provide analog outputs, AES outputs, word sync in, external powering if you want, headphone jacks, volume controls, all that stuff, and they can be mounted additionally in other locations, even on the back of cameras, so you can have 4 channels of wireless, etc., etc. We also make a little field battery powerable slot-in receiver bucket where you can just drop our receivers in, and you can use our traditional L-series video batteries, and you can have analog outputs, digital outputs, word clock, headphone levels, mic level or headphone level outputs, etc., etc., external power in. Here is a view that I think will not be uncommon to most of you, but the idea is that if you start out at a transmitter signals get picked up digitally through the antennas feed into the rack receivers feed audio out via Dante or audio out to your audio consoles or wherever, but they're also being controlled going through and hooked up to a switch for either Dante or for remote controllability. Also off of that switch, you can have a whole bunch of the battery chargers, also up to 6 PCs. And then also hooked up to those switches, you can have up to 9 of those power over Ethernet kind of powerable RMU01s for remote Zigbee antenna control back out to the transmitters. And there's the whole loop. So here's some Dante stuff. Let's not jump completely into that, but I think a bunch of you already have much experience. Briefly, just some interesting news. Since our little body pack transmitter uses these little rechargeable batteries, which is a really nice thing, and the batteries come in and out very easily, so on and so forth, but you don't have to do it that way. But the idea is that we have a LEMO connector and had a microphone out for many years called an ECM88 for many years, but nobody knows about it. And it was a very unique diaphragm design. And what its really huge benefit is that just about all lavaliers have a common problem that nobody really likes to talk about, which is cable rustling noise. You bury that cable carefully under talent's clothing, and by rubbing around, you can literally shh and ruin a take, or it's just obnoxious. And various manufacturers of lavs have tried various coatings of cables or pliabilities of the cables, and not with complete success. Well, don't ever tell a Sony engineer that he can't solve a problem. They kind of go to work. And they came up with an ECM88, and now we have the version that is properly shielded for use with digital transmitters called the ECM90. And it's an extremely small lavalier, barely larger than the cable itself. But it is available in a LEMO connector as well as with our standard 4-pin kind of SMC9 connector. But what's interesting about it is why and how we can get rid of about 90 to 95% of cable rubbing noise. What we decided to do is, rather than mount a traditional round diaphragm in the tip of a capsule, where they've historically always gone, to offset the problems of making a tiny capsule means your diaphragm has to become so small that you lose frequency response and your inherent noise goes up and you lose dynamic range. Well, to offset those problems, sometimes those lavaliers that keep a round diaphragm and the round tip maximize the sound of the diaphragm and don't give it a generous amount of mounting isolation. So our engineers said, well, where is there a law written that round diaphragms have to go in the round tip? What if we take a large rectangular diaphragm and lay it down the side of the capsule for a relatively huge amount of diaphragm for a full 20 to 20K response, incredibly quiet specs. And while we're at it, let's give it a water-resistant sheet and also give it a really generous diaphragm mounting tray so that it is very well isolated from not only the capsule but also from rubbing noise coming up the cable. And while we're at it, let's take a duplicate one of these and put it on the other side of this tiny lavalier microphone for, quite honestly, a huge amount of diaphragm. They're parallel diaphragm. So that is what we do, and it gives a lot of body to even female voices. It's an omni microphone. It doesn't care which direction you orient those slits in, and you can even touch the capsule almost, and as long as you don't rub the actual slit, you will barely hear that. It's got a tiny little, bump at the 10K mark, depending, on off-axis response and so on and so forth. But it's a really interesting lavalier, ECM90. And if you're in the world of lavaliers, I hope you get a chance to try it. So to kind of start wrapping it up in the land of DWX, we offer a full, truly digital solution for ENG with true double tuner diversity and make sure the stuff is absolutely reliable. You know, we don't, when we go into 2-channel mode, we don't just go to antenna diversity, it's true double tuner diversity for each of the 2 channels. We share wireless transmitter metadata on the camera viewfinder, remote controllability, and physically, cosmetically, it matches our cameras, which is not a horrible thing. And we take both channels and send the audio digitally directly into the video file. So again, one A to D out at the transmitter, you come in, the digital audio becomes part of the video file, goes through post-production, goes through editing and transmission to the home, or playback on the movie theater, or whatever it is. And the first D to A is again right before those speakers. So review, we have DWX superb digital audio quality, double tuner diversity, very easy shortcut buttons for finding the best clear frequency and pairing up, and wireless remote controllability, very wide spectrum, 25 kilohertz spacing, encryption, full line of products to kind of go after just about any application, and it's integrated with our lineup. And I also have online training videos, although truth be told, I was just getting ready to do a whole new series of these with our new gear just before we were all sent home. So that will have to wait until after we get back this ability where I can videotape some new presentations. But if you'd like, just go, we have a dedicated Vimeo channel. A lot of these are on YouTube, and you can just search and have a look at those. Okay, any specific other questions on DWX, Peter, while we jump into UWP-D? And I promise to do it really quickly because everybody's running out of time.
Well, there's just 3. What's the most recent version of the wireless studio software, and is it available online to download?
It's not really available online. You can just email me at andy.munitz@sony.com, and I'd be happy to send it to you. I don't think that is currently on, but it's 5.22, I believe. And
yeah, John Christie points out that ProSite has 4.5, Sony Creative Software Site has at 5.1,
right?
But you have 5.22.
Exactly, 5.22. Happy to share. I'm happy to send, obviously, ops manuals and any support information you guys would like on any of this stuff.
Is there anything in the range that can act as a camera hop transmitter?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, you can, depends on how critical your camera hop information, or whether it's just for scratch or whether you really need it. But you could certainly take our body packs and hang them off of a field cart or off of a little field mixer, a bag or something. And we even have a third party by Core SWX, which used to be called Switek. They make a little battery eliminator for our transmitters that use AA batteries and will terminate to any power connected that you traditionally use. So you can power the transmitter off your bag or cart that way. And you can do camera hops out digitally, and certainly your cameras, if they have Sony slots, they can just take our wireless receiver, and there's, you know, obviously you can have 1 million receivers all tuned into the same pair of, you know, the same transmitter. There's no restriction on a one-to-one transmitter receiver. And then, of course, you know, we talked about the encryption capability if you'd like.
The transmitter pack you showed earlier, a little portable box that allows you to use the transmitter pack externally from a camera.
Correct. Exactly. Now, we also make the other one, which uses AA's, and
right.
That can not only be powered off of a AA kind of this little thing I'm talking about, or you can even power it off of USB. So if you can get USB coming out of your rig, you can power that transmitter permanently off the USB and not have to worry about swapping batteries on that. And obviously, then it could be all frequency coordinated with all your Talents mics and so on and so forth.
And of course, your software runs on Macs, right?
Of course it doesn't. Sorry.
Oh,
unless you have. Sorry about that. Unless you've got that Mac PC conversion capability.
Got it.
So sorry about that, but that's our world.
It's okay. It's okay. The output swap function.
Yes.
on a large multi-receiver network systems, maybe you could devise a system where you can just push both jog buttons together to get the output to swap rather than having to go into a menu or something?
Well, no, that's the way it is. You just have to activate that function, and then you can, you hit those both buttons, and then it'll do the output swap. Is that what am I misunderstanding the question?
Well, the exact wording is the output swap function. Could you create a way to swap audio outs on larger multi-receiver network systems? Again, pushing both jog buttons.
That's what it is, I think. I mean, that's,
Oh, okay.
I'm not, yeah, that's exactly what that function allows for. But it's,
Okay.
it's particular to that rack receiver's two outputs. So it's just doing an internal switch inside, out, one out two and two out one.
And with the ENG receivers, how do you connect your laptop to it?
On the ENG receiver there's a little door, a little USB connector on the side you may not be able to see.
Mini.
It looks like it's C. No, mini USB, yes, micro USB, sorry.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not yet C. Doesn't look like it anyway.
Okay, so there's no way to.
But that's primarily for updating firmware and things like that.
But not programming your frequencies, you mean?
Well, that would be for doing the groupings and, custom grouping, I believe. So if you wanted to create your own custom groups, you'd have to get in that way. But it's not, once it's mounted into a bucket of any kind or something like that, you wouldn't really be controlling it further that way.
So what is the workflow for an ENG crew? Do they make a custom group and they all share it so they all have the same frequencies? Do they have access to it, or?
Depends on what your TV station does. Again, if everybody is assigned their own unique frequencies, that can be put into the memory of the receiver. And if you get out into the wilds and you find you've got interference on a channel, you can just rescan and repair or reset your transmitter, and then you're good to go. And then to get back, just call up the memory. So requesting that all photogs at a station are only on a thing is, to me, a little bit restrictive, but it depends on what you're into. I actually, in another use case, I had a large station group ask me specifically, sometimes our ENG crews are assigned to come in and do a story inside of our big facility. We may have multiple studios all in the giant, building. All are using wireless, and we don't want them lighting up on frequencies that we're using. So how can we find a way to make sure that they have only frequencies that are not going to impact? And if they don't come in and obviously do a scan, because that scan could stay away, but if that one studio wasn't lit up at the moment, then they'd be getting a frequency possibly that already will be lit up later. But you can have either that memory call up frequencies that are guaranteed to be away, or you could put in custom groups that are also known to stay away from the studios.
Right.
So
as a frequency coordinator, I have to say that there are two things that bother me about this. One, the ease at which it is to do a frequency scan makes the camera operator just want to pick his own frequency, and he doesn't care that he's going to jump on top of somebody else. And the second thing is the fact that if I give you a frequency and it's not in one of your groups, you've got to spend an hour flipping around till you get to the right thing. If you're in group 00,
I totally understand both. And as I hope that we'll be able to do direct entry, because we have discussed it internally.
I think that's imperative. I mean, it's fine for an ENG crew to have that limitation, but in the real world, you've got to have direct entry.
I get it, absolutely. And to be honest, I was hoping and thinking that we were going to be able to show that at NAB, which obviously didn't happen. So it's not.
This is the NAB
okay.
right here.
But I don't have that yet. I don't have an answer yet, and I apologize. And
Yeah.
you know, you have so much more experience because you are a real world frequency coordinator.
Right.
But do you have cases where photogs just show up and don't pay you any attention and just go off on their own and step on everybody, or are people
Been there.
reasonably good? Been there.
Yeah.
Been
I
there.
mean,
But how
usually.
can you have, I'm sorry, but how can you have a wireless system that is not able to scan? You know, and how could you lock, you know, somebody out from even
No,
doing
no.
that?
I mean, it's nice to have the scannability in there, but if you're on an event with a frequency coordinator or with more than a couple other TV crews, the usual protocol would be for you to turn on your receiver first, see if nothing's on there, and then if nothing's on there, light up your transmitter. Hopefully, you're not on a frequency of somebody else. However,
If you get there early, right?
if you get there early, then somebody else has to worry about it. But then it's highly likely that person isn't being
Sure.
correct protocol and turns it on and dumps right on top of you.
Oh, I see.
You know,
In which case you have to rescan and go find again. I get it. It's, you know, it's a jungle out there, you know.
yeah.
So
Why don't you do your UWP-D as quickly as you can here?
I will. So UWP-D is our mid-level wireless, and it offers all of these products, and we'll blow through this fairly quickly. But this is analog wireless with DSP for digital audio processing. As well, we've added direct digital connection, audio connection to some of our latest Sony cameras. These all employ true double tuner diversity reception, except for one in our dual channel receiver, which I'll talk about. It's got rugged construction, it's great fit and finish. It uses a new channel pairing mode, frequency pairing mode. We use NFC, near field communications, to do that. We have USB powering, so you don't even need batteries. We have battery timers, as well as the 3-segment displays. We have headphone outputs on all the receivers, on all the portable receivers, with something called a new monitor mode. We also, these are available in 12 UHF TV channels, 72 megahertz, 12, you know, in blocks. And these are available in 3 blocks we'll tow through. You can access 2,772 frequencies. They allow for either mic or line level menu switch on both the body pack and the plug-on transmitters. Plug-on also allows for phantom powering, and they are backwards compatible with all of the analog wireless that we've had out for 15 or 20 years because of our doing companion schemes in DSP. So a UWP-D21 kit, UWP stands for UHF Wireless Package. D21 is comprised of a UTX-B40, a UT, T stands for transmitter, B body pack 40, it's a body pack transmitter, a URX-P40 true double tuner portable diversity receiver. Comes with a lock, has OLED screens, 72 megahertz of bandwidth, and it's even available in a 90 block. Comes with all the cables and a cold shoe mount and belt clips and mini to XLR, as well as mini to mini, so on and so forth. UWP-D22 kit is the same receiver with a handheld mic. The handheld mic even offers interchangeable capsules to all the standard industry thread stuff. Same bandwidth, also available in a 72 in a 90 block, 941 to 960. We have the UWP-D26 kit, which adds to the 21 kit by adding, for a very reasonable pump up charge of adding a plug-on transmitter. And that plug-on transmitter, besides being small, is also 48-volt phantom power capable, can be used in boom applications as well as anything with a condenser mic. Mic line selectable, same bandwidth, 90 block for the 941 to 960. The naming convention, again, is UWP-D UHF wireless package with DSP processing. UTX, T for transmitters, RX for receivers, B's for body packs. HR here is for a Hiroshi lav connector, P for plug-on, M for microphone, etc. A URX P03D, since it's a receiver, the P means that it's battery operable and it's portable. D stands for dual channel, because we make a little dual channel portable receiver. And URX S03D, S stands for slot in receiver, because it can slot into the back of Sony cameras. It is not unislot size, it is Sony slot size. Okay, so with this last generation of UWP-D, as well as this current generation, 4th generation of UWP-D, and this stuff has also been out for about 10 or 12 years. In the last 2 generations, we have gone to DSP companding. realizing that you had to compress at the transmitter and re-expand at the receiver. If you just did that through circuitry design and little components that all had various tolerances, you would never get, or highly unlikely to get, a perfect mirror image of the way you compress and the way you expand. So we decided to do it digitally via algorithms. And that means that in this graphic here of a waveform with a very sharp transient sound, an analog system would tend to mush out the wavefront. And with our DSP processing, we hold on to just about all of that transient response. And the stuff sounds really very present and very real. And that's what we wanted to do with DSP. So what it means is in the upper part of this graph, that's the way traditional companding worked. Bring in a signal, analog companding, modulate it, send it, re-expand it. In the below method is the way we currently do it. Take it in, take the mic pre, feed an A to D converter, do the algorithm, and then go back into the analog domain, RF modulate, broadcast it at the receiver, back into digital, and then apply the digital expander algorithm to be a perfect mirror image of the way you compressed it. And at that point, you now have two choices. You can go through a D to A and come out in the analog world to feed another analog A to D input to a digital device, a camera or this or that, but it just means you're going through another D to A and an A to D. And our very latest generation of cameras, we allow you to pick off that signal from inside the DSP and take a digital audio signal and feed it directly out into our latest generation of cameras. If for those of you in the world of cameras, you know that we have our very popular Alpha series. A7R4 is the latest one. We have an A9 Mark II for the sporting world. We have the FX9 and Z280s and so on and so forth. Those all allow for a direct digital interconnect bypassing, again, that last D to A and A to D. But because we have the ability to be in the digital domain and apply various algorithms, you can use an old generation transmitter with a new generation receiver and just tell the new generation receiver, call up the old algorithm of companding, and it's now compatible with an old transmitter, and vice versa. You can use an old new transmitter with an old receiver, and so on and so forth. I know
include the digital receivers?
No, digital receivers don't have any companding. So
no, but I mean, in other words, you can't switch them to use an old.
No, digital. No, these only. This is only the analog based.
Got it.
Okay. So I don't have to go over this. You all understand how multipath works, I believe, and but having true double tuner diversity inside of here with a companding scheme is what is critical, and it is the most critical thing in terms of wireless, to never have a dropout, because you get your first one and you're always wondering and worrying when it's going to happen the next time. So in this graphic here, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, we have the two vertical bars for the A and B tuner, and the A is the stronger, and so the little comparator circuit, as we called it, says A is better, let's switch to it, and if B gets stronger, it'll switch back and forth and flicker A and B, and that's a great thing. But the challenge with putting two complete tuner sections into such a small product is it's a challenge from manufacturing. Not only physically fitting the extra circuitry and the comparator circuit, but continuing to get great battery life out of it. And we wanted to make sure you can get at least 8 hours of AA battery life on a receiver, and even way more on a transmitter on just a pair of alkaline batteries. But making electronics really small and keeping battery life great is, guess what? Something that Sony has tried to do and been doing since the 1970s. And our engineers are just very good at that. So we talked earlier about antenna-only diversity circuit, where you may have a single tuner and two antennas. And we think that possibly at switch points, you possibly could get artifacts, but we think that the best method is true double tuner diversity. And adaptive diversity, meets the goal of having physically less tuner circuitry in a package, but it only has one main antenna in this case, and the audio cable feeding into the camera or wherever acts as a second antenna. And we like to do it as best we can, since we think, signal integrity is the most important thing in wireless. We offer the UWP-D series in 3 blocks. We took what's left after the FCC Spectrum auction and roughly split it in half, our 14 block, which is UHF 14 to 25, and our 25 block, which starts and overlaps at 25, but goes up to 36. And then this is also available up in the 941 to 960 range. All operational menus are the same and functionality as well. We also make two models that continue from the previous generation, one called the URX-P03D. In this small package, which is fairly a little thicker than the previous receiver, we give you two complete independently tunable, portable, independently tunable receiver channels. And the output of that two channel is also either headphone output or two independent mini to minis or mini to XLRs or two minis to a stereo mini, but also they have a microphone input right on the receiver, which is really wacky. I think I have a slide, I'll go into that in a bit. But this unit, when only one of the two channels is powered on, it does true double tuner diversity. It uses both tuners for that one channel. When you power on both, it does antenna diversity. There is obviously a limited amount of size for circuitry inside of these things, especially when you add AA batteries. We make a slot-in receiver, and these all talk to each other in this generation via infrared sync. So even on the slot-in receiver, we had a little infrared window up on top, and you can just hold your transmitter up and within a couple of feet of that and set your transmitter after scanning. It's also available now as a slot-in receiver in 900. And this stuff is all very reasonably priced, UWP-D wireless. A lot of, mid-market TV stations and people, have slightly less expensive shoulder cams from us. This just perfectly fits the bill. And certainly the smaller, what we refer to digital imaging or DI cameras, are all really well, meant to use some of this smaller stuff. The URX-P03D, though, has that really unique microphone input right on the receiver. What is a wireless receiver doing with an extra mic input? Well, that extra mic input can take not only a mono microphone, like a little local shotgun, plus also it could alternately take a little stereo ambient microphone. We offer one of these in our consumer line. They're not more than about $30 or $40. But what we do allow is that external input can be mixed with the two wireless channels and even level balanced to match. So at the bottom of channel 1's menu and channel 2's menu is a little built-in mixing menu that says, do you want channel 1 to leave output 1, or do you want it to leave output 2, or do you want it to leave both 1 and 2 simultaneously, effectively monoizing the output? And you could do that with the second channel as well. So conceivably, if you're doing a live remote from a camera position, you've got two talent, you can have them both mixed down the center so they show up live out of the center of the viewer's TV, not one out of the left speaker and one out of the right speaker. But at the same time, you can take an external stereo mic, let's say, and you're at a football game and you're capturing in stereo the live screaming sounds of 80,000 fans, and you're capturing that stereo ambience, and you can mix it in and also balance the level so it doesn't, kind of overplay the two talents microphones, and the people at home will hear that they're in that audible live sound space. So that is really kind of a cool thing. These also use clear channel and active channel scanning. That is via infrared, and we have headphone monitoring, so you can monitor directly at the receiver instead of monitoring only through the camera, and that can help in troubleshooting or making sure that the link is absolutely clean. And these also have 72 megahertz bandwidth. So the true,
on both of these bunch of the analog receivers and the digital, can you load a frequency into the transmitter but not have it begin transmitting right away? Is there a way to kill the transmitter while you're programming it?
Yes, there is, as a matter of fact. We actually don't want people to be able to change frequencies and a few other menus while the transmitter is live. You have to go into a specific mode, which you get to by powering on the transmitter while you hold the set button. And then the power output menu and the frequency setting menu and a couple of others become available. The unit is still not transmitting until you power cycle the unit again, power down and come back up.
Okay.
And that'll be on that. And that's the same for both systems.
And John Christie has a question, which I'm sure people have thought this for years about other products, like the PSM 1000, which is a full diversity in-ear monitor. How can you claim something full diversity with your antennas only 1.5 inches apart, because they're not the ideal spacing of at least a wavelength apart? And I think if I were to say something is better than nothing, basically.
I would agree with you. Something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you know, whatever. But I will tell you, in my own experience, having worked with this wireless since I've been working with Sony for way too many years, I've never heard this stuff drop out. Obviously, if somebody's doing a walk test and they go several hundred feet away, that's your radio station's not powerful enough. But at all traditional distances, and I have taken our new UWP-D, and I did a walk test a couple of weeks ago, put the transmitter at the foot of my driveway, playing music from my cell phone. No, but this is with UWP-D.
Oh, really?
And I got UWP-D out at full power, out to over 1,200 feet. So before I got to drop out. So anyway, and that's a different scenario. That's why I mentioned it. But yes, okay. So I'll continue on. So now we're talking about the new 4th generation. We've gone to OLED screens. It's still ruggedly built, but we have done something for those people that are still a little bit nervous about even going into a menu to clear scan. And that has to do with finding, obviously, the quietest frequency available at any given time. So we are using NFC pairing. If you look under the left graphic below the yellow, there's a little NFC logo. And on the right picture of the transmitter, there's a little NFC logo. And basically, these things talk to each other. So there's also, you don't have to go into a menu. On the far left, you'll say we have a dedicated top panel scanning button. So I'm going to do it on mine right here. And I'm going to do it in a group that's a very quick scan, by the way, group 09. But I'm going to hold this down, and about 3 seconds, and it's off to the races, and it's scanning, and it flashes black and white. And now I take the transmitter, put them face to face where the NFC logos are apart, and you're done. And that's as hard as it is to pair up the transmitter with the receiver on the quietest frequency you found. And all of our transmitters have that little NFC logo. But the transmitters also have a buried infrared sensor underneath the top panel, so that if you have any of our older receivers that scan and send the information out IR, you can do it that way as well. However, we took this one step further, and we did the exact opposite. We said, how about having the receiver get its frequency from the transmitter via NFC syncing? So in the example on the left graphic, it might be a multi-camera shoot where all cameras have the receiver, but they all want to listen to the same transmitter. You can tell the receivers, go ahead into a menu and learn to go, pick up another one, pick up another one, pick up another one. And now all the receivers are on the right frequency. As well, since the receivers, as you can see in the picture, have headphone outputs, main outputs as well as headphone outputs, these make a totally frequency coordinatable body pack, if you will, on-set monitoring receiver. And you can, have as many of these on set, all listening to that transmitter, which may be hanging off of your camera bag or your cart. And these on an individual basis are, very inexpensive, and they can be frequency coordinated with all your Talents mics. And the plus and minus button, we have something called monitoring mode, which I'll get into, but I might as well mention it now. When this is mounted on your belt, the plus and minus buttons just become the plus and minus volume buttons. So you can constantly change levels if you'd like while you've got it on your belt. So that is kind of an interesting thing. But obviously these could also be purchased in the 900 megahertz, 941 to 960, if you want them to be completely separate from the other stuff. Okay, got to move on. That monitor mode, again, is what I just talked about, where you can have the plus and minus button always be available just at a push of a button. Your fingers just fall down on those buttons on your waist to update channels. We have something, again, kind of unique between Sony cameras and Sony wireless, which is, first of all, we've gone into a smaller profile of these things. Well, this whole new generation is about 20% smaller than the previous generation. And that's obviously a nice thing. But we've added a new, what's called a multi-interface shoe. We've always had multi-interface connection between this and our last series of wireless, but we've updated that to allow for the direct digital connection. And obviously, because the receivers are smaller, they don't hang out as far over DSLR lenses, et cetera, et cetera. Here is the relative size of the body packs, but we've gone to a new battery pack kind of architecture. These little battery packs that hold your AA's are a new design, and they have little rubber hinged doors that flip up, and you put in your batteries there, and then you slide it and click it onto the receiver in this case. And one of the reasons that's good is some people, unfortunately, may not use their wireless often enough, and if batteries leak inside of your transmitters or receivers, they can ruin a several $100 piece of equipment. In this case, they will leak just inside of this little case, and that's, you know, roughly a $30 item. So that's a nice thing, as well as making it far more waterproof. We also have USB powering. You can power these off of USB on the side. We have battery count-up timers versus just the 3-segment bar graph, which you never really trust, and that can add up to real dollars after the use of the year. So let's moving on. We've added a capability of a new default in these body packs of auto gain mode. We've always had the ability to adjust the gain of the microphone and the transmitter, but if you're not an audio guy, you don't really know about that. So now we have auto gain mode as well as a 15 dB boost mode for people that always hold the microphone too far away from talent. But you can also go in to the manual gain mode if you'd like. Here's something that we added that I think is particularly clever, and it's called channel memory. We're all used to our TV remote controls having a last button or a channel memory button or jump button to go back to the last channel and switch back and forth between your two favorite frequencies. Well, guess what? We've added that into our new receivers. So in one situation, you could obviously switch back and forth between presenter 1 and presenter 2. And it's just the current frequency and the last frequency. And if you're a wedding videographer, you know, I won't make the long story, but you know, you've got a body pack on the groom, and after the ceremony and all the close-up wedding vows, he's off with the bride and with the photographer, and they're getting their pictures taken, and you're in the reception with another, you know, another microphone getting all the well wishes from the guests. And then they show back up from the wedding, from the photography session, and they go for their very first dance, and you go, wouldn't it be great if I had his microphone open again, because he got so much battery life out of his transmitter, he's still active, and you just flip to his frequency, and now you get them doing their first dance. Or you got two presenters in the front of the room trading off PowerPoint presentations. Obviously, it'd be great if you just had a dual channel receiver and do it that way, but not everybody has that luxury. So here's a way, even if you got critical talent, you can do a very fast swap. So one other new feature that we've added that some of you, a little light might go off in your head, is we've added an occupancy sensor filter. We discovered a few years ago that in a lot of green buildings, sometimes to turn the lights off when people leave the room, there's an ultra high frequency emitter that usually is in the ceiling, but has now even started making its way into wall mount light switches that puts out a 32 kilohertz or a 40 kilohertz high frequency. And that is obviously out of our hearing range, but it can get in and kind of do a little tap dance on the companding schemes. So we are using a little portion of our onboard DSP in these transmitters to put in a selectable filter, no filter, or 20 kilohertz or 15 kilohertz. And obviously, since voice is so much lower than that, 3 kilohertz rough range, you won't hear that these filters are in. But if you're doing an interview in somebody's office, for example, and you're hearing a little bit of odd, artifact, but you walk outside into the hallway and it's not there anymore, chances are he's got an occupancy sensor, and you can just flip on the filter and away you go. We've got low cut filter settings in here for 100, 150, 200 for wind noise, variable power output, battery display menus depending also on the type of battery you have, micro line level switching, simple and advanced menus. We also have this, as I was hinting at before, what's called an intelligent shoe. This little guy goes on to the bottom of our receivers, and when you put them on, it means, and you tighten the little knob down because there's a lot of little pins in here, it means that you can attach it to a whole range of Sony cameras, starting at our Alpha 6000 series, actually maybe even a little lower than that these days, all the way up through our latest FX9 digital cinema camera. And when you put it on there, audio goes right through the receiver, down through the shoe, and directly into the camera. And in the camera's menu, you can choose where that audio channel might go, for example, or via switches on the side of the camera. But as well, you can remove the batteries from these receivers, and you can power that receiver from the camera's battery power. Obviously, a bigger camera has a longer battery life and all that kind of stuff, but you can do that, and it makes the camera actually a whole lot lighter. One thing that we have done here is we've also put on, up in the upper right-hand picture, there's a little on the new little MI shoe, there's a digital or analog switch, because I mentioned earlier that you can take the audio at the DSP point of the receiver and feed that digital audio signal directly into these latest generation of our cameras and bypass a final D to A and an A to D. And that actually makes a difference. I listened to the difference. So I think we finished, only 6:15. I certainly appreciate everybody hanging in there, and really much appreciated, and hope you picked up some information and have a better sense of what we're up to at Sony in the world of wireless.
It was really good. Thank you very much. I learned a lot, and I obviously, as I said before, Henry Cohen brought up the same subject again as a frequency coordinator about the ease at which people can do a scan, and the trouble with people selecting a specific frequency is a problem on an event, and you should definitely take back to the all those people with the numbers that you talk about at the company and say you've got to have that ability in there. Now the second thing is, if I'm
sorry for 1 second. I'm not quite sure. I certainly the direct entry, I totally get that. Totally makes sense. But I'm not sure what kind of lockout feature you would ask.
No. But if I were a coordinator, somebody comes, they give me something in block 29, if it was electro, for instance. Yeah. I would just hand them double the number of frequencies they asked for, and I would text it to them, and then that would give them plenty of frequencies to use, even if theirs didn't work. But with these having specific things in their set, I'd have to, I guess, ask them, tell me the frequencies that are already in your.
No. If you're on group 00, you're not in anything. You can send them any frequency, right?
But I wouldn't ask a cameraman to scroll from 00 to 50. It'd take him all night. He'd miss his shot.
I understand. Yeah. So clearly the direct entry, I completely agree with you. I totally agree with you. Absolutely.
Definitely. But I think that the key is, if I run up against somebody using Sony, and this has happened before, I always give them double the number of frequencies that they really want.
Sure.
Just to avoid them having to come back and bother me, And then, of course, I text it to them so they have my phone number. So if they have a problem, they can as reasonably text me and say, I got a problem.
I completely agree with you. As a matter of fact, several years ago, I got a call from Peter Schneider at Gotham, and he's, because he does a lot of frequency coordinator work as well. And he was doing a big, giant political convention late in the political process. And he said, I'm encountering so many people using your digital wireless as ENG crews, but they actually don't really know how to frequency coordinate. They don't know how to dial in the frequency. So I told him, he got it. He goes, oh, okay, I get it. And
does the DWX have the same camera shoe capabilities?
DWX slots in, so it's a little bit larger.
It won't go on my
smaller camera.
The other cameras, right?
Well, it'll go on because we make a little bucket, which is barely bigger than the size of the actual receiver, and then that unit has either a V mount, or you can come up with any number of Velcro mounts. So there's a bunch, and there's some aftermarket buckets.
Wired in.
Audio-wise,
right?
It's just two audio connectors into the back bottom of the camera. I know there's a company called Hawkwoods in England. They make a nice little accessory bucket.
Actually, but now that we made an accessory bucket that had the shoe mount on it, that brought the cables into it, that it plugged into, bingo, everything's solved.
I get it. And I appreciate the desire to have, full digital at all levels, and I'm all for that. But anyway, okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's great. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was
now one
very catchy
question
names,
did
those
come
mics.
in was making sure we could get these slides as a PDF for our archive, and I replied back to that person that yes, we'd get those from you.
Great.
So
Okay, we'll make
Andy will
that
be
happen very
sending that
soon.
on over to us, and
Right.
we'll make sure that that gets in our archive page, and then also just follow up with us at practicalshowtech.com or practicalshow.tech, and we'll, as soon as I get it from Andy, I'll be happy to shoot it out to anybody who sends a note, but then we'll also include it with the video, of course. Andy, that was a lot of information.
That's
well
a lot of
laid out.
information.
No,
Yeah.
it's awesome. This is
Only
what we're
talk a
about.
little faster.
Yeah.
Just talk a little bit faster.
You want it a little
Man,
faster? I can go faster, but my
You
God.
did good, man. That's
Okay.
there's a lot of info, but that's what we're here for. So
Good,
thank
good,
you for taking the time to do that. And it's not quite like those 5-minute NAB conversations, right? Where you go by
Right.
the booth and you're just, just give me the cut sheet. I think we actually get more info this way than I have at most trade shows I've gone to,
I
frankly.
agree. What I would do at NAB, by the way, is I would have people come up and listen to that ECM 90 lavalier and how
Right.
it got rid of the versus another lav we have, and listen to the difference. They go, "You're kidding me," So that
Yeah, that's
would
the part that we kind of miss, don't we? There's
we
I think we've
do.
gotten that comment a few times. Well, not a few times, a lot of times that people are like, I just want to get behind the gear again. I just want to,
I
just want to
know.
touch it. I want to use it. And we
Absolutely.
will.
So that said, just to reiterate a couple of points, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
just contact me. I will send you so much information on all of this stuff, ops manuals, installation guides, software, whatever you'd like. And if you have a real application and you'd like any of this gear for demo, get in touch with me and we'll try to make that happen as well. I'm all
Yeah.
about letting
Is
people
there
play.
a video on changing the frequency in the DWX series?
It
'Cause several
exists.
people said, I can't, my crew can't do it. They refuse to do it because it's too hard.
It's literally on the receiver. You
Yeah.
hold the
Well, no,
set
but
button
I
down
mean,
and click it in.
but
Yeah,
is there a video? No.
there is absolutely. If you go to that Vimeo.com,
Okay,
that,
cool.
I got a whole video
Perfect.
there on DWX wireless and how to operate
Perfect.
every menu function and everything.
It's on Vimeo, right?
It's on Vimeo. It's on YouTube. It's all over the
Okay.
place.
Right.
Absolutely. So if you search YouTube on, Sony DWX, I bet
Got
you
it.
it pops up that way. But I'm willing to send links out to anybody. Just get in touch with me.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's
Cool.
awesome.
And it's a great teaching tool. It's
Mhm.
if people go through it and do it on their own, and they watch another 15 seconds and do it on their own, light bulbs just go off. They go, "That's it. That's all I had to do." So it's that not maybe understanding the language of audio or being a little intimidated by it.
Henry and I will carry this video on a little projector. If we run into a crew,
Hi,
we'll say,
Henry.
go into
Hi,
this
Henry. Right.
bathroom here and look at this video.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And welcome, Mac. Mac joined us.
Hi, Mac.
He's representing everybody on our crew. He's the one that works, and then he represents all of us on the job site.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's good to see you. And we're excited about the more knowledge, more things we've learned. I can't stress
Sharing is
enough to
caring.
people.
Sharing is caring.
There you go. In that case, we care a lot.
That's right.
But a lot of the people watching, these, you got to understand, a contact like Andy, reach out to him. A lot of these questions were really great questions, and I know that a lot of our folks do come from that broadcast background. Get Andy's number, get his email into your phone now, because you may not be right in front of this gear right now, but that moment's going to come, and he's going to be an invaluable asset. So get it in your phone now. Make those contacts, get that info. So
Thank you.
even
Even
Mac,
though my wife wouldn't want me to say it any time of day or night.
Anytime,
right.
especially at
Right.
lunchtime. Right.
We're probably awake anyway, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, I guess that kind of wraps us up. You know, thanks for coming in, Mac, and making your appearance. We do appreciate it. And meanwhile, we'll see everybody back here on Friday. We've got our next wave of going on, and we're going to continue RF discussion. That one's going to be with RF Venue, and Chris is going to be here talking specifically about RF solutions that they have right around, you know, really challenging environments, things that will complement Sony product very nicely. So I would suggest everybody tunes in, register now if you haven't gotten in there before PM Eastern again. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody then.
Hurry before it fills up.
Hurry before the whole auditorium is filled up, and Mac will probably come at some point that day too. So
There we
Oh,
go.
don't be cruel.
I'm not, man. It's always good to see you regardless, and I am happy that you're staying busy. I'll get my chance later. So anyhow, have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for being a part of this, and we'll certainly be talking. So long, Andy. Thanks for being a part.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.